Right, so I look like I'm in a mental institute because pretty much everything is white apart from a few of the books behind me. Uh, that being said, without further ado, I want to get into my June wrap up. I want to apologise. First of all, there's been a bit of a lack of content over here. Obviously, I'm back over on Twitch doing videos over there, or doing streams over there now instead of over here. Just finding that one, having to make a thumbnail for every single stream that I was doing was starting to get a little bit annoying. I was constantly being late to starting streams. Also, I just wasn't finding that the viewership was coming in. Maybe people thinking that they're videos and that can we'll just watch them later, and that was happening. But I just want to have the viewership coming in to the streams when the streams are actually live. So I feel like that's an easier thing to make happen on Twitch. Just I prefer the Twitch layout of everything, and just it's built for streaming first and foremost. YouTube is not built for that. It doesn't have all of the good quality of life things that Twitch has. Twitch is not perfect, but it's more suited towards streaming than YouTube is. And before anyone comments, I'm not going to start streaming on Kick or anything. I don't agree with a lot of the practices of a lot of it feels like that is the streaming service for the like Andrew Tates or the Aiden Rosses of the world, and I don't agree with those kinds of people, so I do not want to enter a platform that has those kinds of voices on it. I don't want to enter a platform that allows those kinds of voices to, reach the tops of those algorithms. You could also argue that the same for something like YouTube as well. But I was here before they were. I will always, I always call out voices like that if they are in, if they do reach over to the spaces that I'm in, and all the rest of it. But enough talk about that. Let's just move on to what I read this month, what I watched this month, all that good stuff. No movies to talk about this month. Just didn't get around to watching any movies. I'm going to watch Supergirl on the 1st. So obviously that's a little bit late. I don't want to do, everything that I watched in June on the 2nd of July. Because if I'm watching on the 1st of July, it's not a thing that I'm watching in June. So it doesn't go in the June wrap up, it goes in the July wrap up. The same thing will be said for Spider-Man Brand New Day. I'm going to watch that on my birthday, so I'm not going to have that in the July wrap up. I'm doing the July wrap up. I will probably be doing the July wrap up in August, but I won't be talking about Spider-Man in the July wrap up. Going into the things that I've been playing, obviously I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth over on Twitch. Have the first few streams up on here, and then I've been just plowing through the game over on Twitch. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I know a lot of people say that it goes into too many different variations of gameplay styles. It's a lot of mini games, and it is a very video game. I feel like that's great. I haven't found anything that I've necessarily been put off by or that I've been annoyed by. The card game, there is a There is a card game that's in it that's introduced right at the start of the game that is like very much like a few hours like later after it's introduced. You are like put into a tournament, and that is mandatory. It's doable with the starter deck. I did it with the starter deck, but it is definitely recommended that you do at least some of the opening card game bits, which I decided not to do because I thought it was just going to be a side quest thing that you can do if you want to do it as a side quest. I didn't realise that there was going to be... I apologise, I didn't realise that there was going to be moments... I didn't realise that there was going to be stuff throughout the game that was mandatory, that you know, meant that it was mandatory to get new cards for your deck, or that it was going to be made easier by having new cards in your deck. I thought, you know, you can kind of get away with doing one of the mini games and then not having to do the rest of them. But, you know, if you have to kind of engage in the mechanics, if there's things that force you to engage in the mechanics of, you know, side content in the game, then I feel like that can only be... I feel like that's a good thing. But the game is big enough and long enough on its own that you don't really need that. But like I said, I'm only about like 13 hours into it, and apparently it's a huge game. It's a whole lot longer than that. So I'm excited to get further into it, especially with the length of Final Fantasy 16. Like that was like 60 hours. So that was the whole of my February, was just that game. So I'm excited to get further into this. But, you know, I'm fully aware that I'm going to be taking a lot of time, and it's probably going to be deep into July before I see the end of the game. But that being said, straight to the things I watched this month. The only thing that's really worth talking about is I've been keeping up with the Pit. We're one episode away from the finale. Obviously, if you're watching this in America, you've seen the finale. Please don't spoil anything in the comments. But over in the UK, we only just recently got HBO Max a couple of months ago. So we're playing catch up with a lot of shows that have been out and that were out in the early parts of the year. So people in America have seen the whole Pit season 2. But in the UK, the finale, annoyingly, is not until the 3rd of July. It would have been fun if the finale was on the 4th of July, given that this season has been set on the 4th of July. I'm just saying it would have been funny. But this is an amazing show. I do think everyone should be watching it. It's an amazing insight. There is something else that I want to talk about as well. There's some amazing insight into the healthcare system in America. I'm getting a lot of information that I didn't know already. I do want to just clarify, because we had a specific episode that deals with a specific group of people in America that I do not like. I just want to say, fuck ICE. I do want to say that, and if you have a problem with me saying that, I have a problem with you. So there you go. But yeah, that episode, and just, you know, what happens to one of the nurses as well. We still don't have any answers of if that nurse is going to be okay, if they're even going to get back to the hospital before the end of the day. That's, you know, it's a really scary part of living in America at the moment. What can I really say? Yeah, it's a really like eye-opening show, not only in the fact of, yeah, I know certain things about the healthcare system in America. I know that the they don't really have an equivalent to the NHS, but what is their equivalent to the NHS, which would be Medicare, or what was Obamacare back when they had a decent president. Yeah, this video is going to get me in a lot of trouble, I feel like. But, you know, I can't talk about the shows that I watched this month without delving a little bit into you know, my thoughts and feelings about the world around me. But, you know, they're still not good enough. And, you know, even the NHS, what we've got here, isn't amazing. And, you know, it's, you know, what we've got here is a flawed system, but at least, you know, someone like me who's on low income can see a doctor and can get, you know, if I am, God forbid, in a near fatal accident, I can, you know, get sent to hospital and not have a massive bill when I get home. But people in America do not have that luxury, and I'm very aware of how privileged I am to be in that situation. It's also terrifying that, you know, certain individuals keep threatening to take that away. And I feel like more people in the UK, more people in the UK should be watching The Pit, and more people in the UK should be aware of how privileged we are to have something like the NHS. And this show specifically is, you know, opening my eyes more and more about just how privileged of a position that I live in to have something like the NHS, and it's something that should be protected and improved upon, and not, you know, thrown under the bus or thrown to the wayside because the way that it works right now is flawed, for lack of a better term. But I won't get into my reasons as to why it's flawed, because, you know, you're here to watch me talk about books, not, you know, the state of the world. But without further ado, let's get into the other show that I watched that I just recently wrapped up, which, again, is going to be a lot of me talking about the state of the world that we live in. I watched the 5-part Russell T Davies drama Tiptoe. Main reason why I watched this is because, again, we have a rule in our house: if David Morrissey is in something, we watch it, essentially. And in this show, David Morrissey lives next door to, or David Morrissey's character lives next door to Alan Cumming, who, if you're a member of my audience, you will probably know him best as Nightcrawler from X2, X-Men United. You'll also probably know him from The Traitors US. You'll also probably know him from hosting the BAFTAs earlier this year with a certain incident that happened at the BAFTAs, which I will not go on about. But David Morrissey's character, Clive, is basically the typical middle-aged white guy in England at the moment, you know, kind of getting all of his information online, spends a lot of time on, Facebook, looking at, videos of far-right individuals, videos of, very graphic things online, and gets most of his information about the world around him from idiots on Facebook. And so he's this kind of individual, and his next door neighbor is a homosexual man. And things come to a head in the bulk of the show. Clive's son is homosexual, but can't come out to his dad because he's scared that his dad won't understand him. Kind of knows the kind of political views that his dad has, and feels scared of him, essentially. We're not told that as such, but there is also this fear of the people around this character, that his dad probably isn't the best person for him to come out to, because it could end up being World War III. As the show develops, the two neighbours start to clash more and more, and it's this kind of breakdown of the two extremes in the UK at the moment, where you have this person that gets all of his information off of Facebook, doesn't really have, like, is so set in his ways, doesn't listen to really the views of anyone, but is that something, is this person born horrible, or is this person, is this person like that through their shame of their own, sexuality or their own things? But, push comes to shove, and the series ends with Clive and his football hooligan mates hanging his gay next door neighbour, on a lamppost. And when, it's not a spoiler because it's the first thing that you see in the show, and the reason why I say this is the show is shocking. The show is shocking, and it's meant to elicit a response. It's meant to shock the audience. I feel like it's meant to shock and wake up the kind of people that are spending their whole time doom scrolling through social media, because no one, I think, wakes up, no right-minded individual wakes up and is like, or no right-minded individual is born with the feeling of, I am going to hang a gay person today. What this show is serving as a warning is it's a warning against doom scrolling, and it's a warning against voices like, Tommy Robinson, Nigel Farage, Reform UK, Restore UK. It's a warning against those kind of voices, because it is, not to mince words, it's insipid poison, essentially. And the climax of the show, which is also the first thing that you see and the first thing that you see of every episode, is almost like this is where we're going. This is what, and the show isn't based on a true story, but it is very much the kind of things happening around all over the UK at the moment. I implore, it's not an easy watch by any means. It's a very difficult watch. It's a very eye-opening watch. It's a very shocking watch. It's a very angry watch. For me specifically, I was angry at so many points, because there are so many points where you're given this glimpse of hope that, you're given this glimpse of hope that maybe Clive can be redeemed, and maybe Clive can be snapped out of whatever he's in. But it ends with the most horrific of hate crimes, and it's a visual that, I only watched the last episode a couple of days ago, but it's a visual that I do not think, as much as like these are fictional characters being played by actors that I like, but the visual of someone being hung, it's even made me a bit uncomfortable having an extension lead in my house, because that's what he's hung with. It's made me feel uncomfortable even, seeing that. But it's a visual that will live with me for a very, very long time. And this show, more than any other show, I feel like is one that is a, I'm not going to recommend it because it's fun and entertaining. I'm going to recommend it because I think it's something that needs to be watched, and I think it serves as a massive warning of not only where, the UK is going. We see all of this stuff in the media from the US, and how insane their leaders are, and how insane the things that are happening in the US are. I feel like, if you're an American, this is a show that will, this is a show that will kind of, educate you on the state of this country, and how, and it is a warning sign that, things are not too dissimilar, as much as we want to say we're better than those across the pond, and we're, as much as we want to say that, things are heading in that direction. And that's, what this show kind of is about, really. It's, that, it's a warning sign of, are we heading towards, are we heading towards what's going on in America, and are we forgetting our own dark history in this country as well? You're ready to talk about some books then? You're ready to have a complete switch up of tone then? Let's do that. Enough of the jibber jabber, and probably every comment on this video is going to be, calling me a leftist twat, or, any other thing. But, people are entitled to their opinion, and like freedom of speech has to go both ways. If you're one of those people that wants to say you should be entitled to say whatever you want, I should be entitled to say I think you're a twat. You know, it should go both ways. But anyway, without further ado, let's talk about The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. We're going to talk about the books that I've read or have been reading, because yes, I finished this in June. I primarily read most of it in May. And the book that I started in June, I haven't finished yet. So yeah, the reason why I'm in a bit of a reading slump is not because I'm not enjoying the books that I've been reading. I loved this. You know I loved this. I have like a 20-minute video talking about this and the rest of Mistborn Era 2 on my channel. Over the last week, the UK has had a massive heat wave, and I know American viewers are going to be like, "Alright, you don't know what heat is in the UK. What's the heat wave? Is it? I bet there's still snow on the ground." If I go into if I go into the science of why the UK gets summers that feel so much hotter than, you know, even though it is the same temperature, and the lack of AC and the fact that I've got a fan on right now, and, you know, having double, triple glazed windows to trap heat in, if I go into that, I'll be here forever. And I get the feeling that most people do not want to listen to me about that, especially since I've just gone on, you know, 10 minutes on, you know, the political state of the UK at the moment. You know, people don't want to hear about, you know, ooh, wow, heat wave. But anyway, I've just been, you know, I haven't really been thinking about reading. I've been thinking about drinking water. Really. I've been thinking about drinking water and, you know, having ice cream for most of the last 2 weeks. So reading hasn't really been at the top of my priorities list. But that being said, I did finish The Lost Metal. I really enjoyed it. If you want to hear me talk about this book in like proper depth, go watch the video that I did talking about The Lost Metal. I will have it linked somewhere, probably at the end of this one. So that's some incentive to get to the end of this video, is so that you can get to watch that one. What I will say, something that I didn't mention in the video, but I will mention now, is the length of the chapters and the difference in length of the chapters in The Lost Metal as opposed to the Bands of Morning, Shadows Itself, all that. The rest of the series has had about 17 to 19, you know, chapters. The Lost Metal has 72 chapters, and it's not that thick, really. It's not that thick of a boy. So the chapters in this are a lot thinner, a lot quicker than the chapters in the rest of the series. So even though it is, you know, larger in page count, it does feel like it has more of that, like, just one more chapter ability in it, because the chapters are so quick and the chapters have so few pages in them that you're just like, I've barely read anything. I've just got to get one more chapter in. I've got time to get, you know, 4 more pages in. I'll just read another chapter. So yeah, the one more chapter ability of The Lost Metal is much higher than the rest of the series, and it makes the pace feel like you're hurtling towards the finish line. And, you know, it kind of makes the whole book feel a bit like a Sanderlanche, really. And when you actually get to the climax of the book, it feels even quicker. It feels like a mad sprint. Which is completely juxtaposed to what I have been reading for the majority of this month, which is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I did kind of put up on everything that I wanted. I wanted like votes in for what book I should read when I was finished with Mistborn Era 2, and this won the poll. And by this won the poll, I mean a lot of people in the Talking Story Discord told me to read this, but JCM Byrne told me to read his book, so that's what I'm going to be reading next. Because if an author tells you to read their book, you listen. But a majority of people told me to read this, so I read this first, or I'm reading this first. I'm just over halfway through, so I'm nearly, the rest of the book is probably going to fly by. And, with the temperature dropping, I'm going to be more inclined to actually open the book and be able to think, to read it. But yeah, this has been... I knew I was going to like this going into it, because I loved the film. And the general rule is, I know not every movie is like this, but the general rule is, or not every book that gets adapted to a film is like this, but the general rule is, if a movie's good, the book is usually better. If an adaptation is bad, the book is usually good. Books are usually better than the films, is what I'm trying to say. It's not a blanket statement. It's not always the case, but more often than not, it is the case. And with this, I feel like the movie is a lateral move, because it takes, from what I've seen, is most of the space stuff, most of the present day stuff, the stuff of Ryland Grace in space, most of that is completely one for one. Most of the stuff of him being in space, finding out how he got into space, what he's doing in space is, and all of the stuff with Rocky, is pretty much one for one. The flashbacks, especially now getting into the middle of the book, and the flashbacks there's a lot more stuff. There's a lot more flashbacks in this. And yeah, if we had all of them in the film, there would be a lot of stuff that's not really useful information. And there would be a lot of stuff that, there'd be a lot of stuff that should be, that, kind of doesn't need to be said, that is said. And there's a lot of, moral stuff that's kind of crossing the line of Ryan Grace's morals, that, there's a lot of lines that get crossed, in, the morals of the question of what lines is it okay to cross to save the planet. That question is brought up a lot, and essentially the answer is all of them. Cross all of them. And I feel like if everything that happened in the book, all of the flashbacks from the book were in the film, Strat, or what's her name? Sarah Snook? Or Sadie Snook? I'm thinking of Sadie Sink. No, Sarah Snook, I want to say. Sandra Snook? Sarah Snook. The woman that played Strat in the film, her character of Strat would have been completely unlikable. And in the film she isn't. In this, yes. Yes, she is. Very much 100% completely unlikable. Completely, yeah, there's moral lines that you're kind of allowed to cross when you're saving the planet, and you are kind of, you're faced with a lot of like hard questions, but also she's just not a likable character. Ryland Grace, incredibly likable. Rocky, he's the best boy. The you know her, she's not a likable character, and yeah, a lot of the stuff that makes her unlikable in the book is not in the film. That's all I will say, because I haven't finished it, and I fear that I fear that the last like 10 chapters of the book are going to make me like double back on my my feelings of many a character. However, there is only like really 3 main characters in the book. Because there's some flashbacks where Ryland Grace doesn't really do much of anything, which is kind of the point. You're made to feel like he's very much a background character, and obviously the twist in the film and all that. But yeah, I'm really thoroughly enjoying the book. Not more than the film, but I didn't enjoy the film more than I'm enjoying the book either. I feel like they're both very much equal, and it's as rare as it is to find a book that is, or a film that is better than the book, it's even rarer to find 2 that are pretty much balanced and equal. We're now going to go into the comics that I read this month, and it's a fairly short stack this month, and not a lot of stuff here is amazing. I'll be completely honest. There's some stuff that's really, really good, but I feel like because we're quite a ways into a lot of runs, we're starting to pedal a lot. We're starting to be like pedaling and like treading water with a lot of runs. The Ultimates hit issue 24. I'm going to be doing this in order of, we're going to have like the book I enjoyed the least first, and the book that I enjoyed the most will be the last book that I talk about. The Ultimates, issue 24. This is the final issue. And does it have a climactic conclusion? Is every character that's been involved in the run in this issue? Is the main character of this run in this issue Iron Lad? Does this feel like it's does this feel like a bookend? Does this even feel like a conclusion to the series? If I told you the answer to that, the answer to all of those questions is no, would you feel like it is 24 issues well spent? Because I don't feel that way. I've been reading this series really curious to see how they end it, especially since, you've got Ultimate Endgame going on at the moment. And I had that question in the back of my head, is how do you make the Ultimates book feel, have a conclusion and feel like it cleans up all of the storylines and all of the things that have been built up in the Ultimates, while also having the end of the Ultimate Universe happening almost coinciding with it? And the answer is, you don't do that. You have the ending of your series essentially be a see you next week kind of. You basically have it be like, oh, we're going to fight the Hulk. We're going to deal with that problem. But the looming threat of the Maker is not something that's going to be dealt with in the Ultimates book. And I feel like that was the point of an Ultimates book, is to be like, Ultimate Endgame should not have been its own mini-series. And the only reason why Ultimate Endgame is its own mini-series is because, well, every other Ultimate book has to run to max 24. So I beg the question, why was the final arc of this not just Ultimate Endgame? Why not just sack off the last 5 issues that we've had and have the last 5 issues be the 5 issues of Ultimate Endgame that we've had? Surely you can do that. Surely you can afford to do that. Because, you know, you would have had Peter die after the final issue of Ultimate Spider-Man came out, so the timing wouldn't have been thrown off by that. You know, you don't have to do that stupid, self-indulgent Thor issue, which is basically just a poem, and it's one that you already did. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. It's a really disappointing end to a really disappointing book. And the stupid thing about Ultimates is, I was sucked in for the first, 6 issues. Issue 7 came out and I was like, I am done. I don't care about these characters. I don't care about the story that they're trying to tell. And all of the very forward political messaging that's being shoved down your throat. You know, and I may sound like a massive hypocrite because of, you know, all the things that I said at the start of this video, the first 20 minutes of this video. But I don't feel like superhero comics are the right place to put political propaganda, or to feel like political propaganda. You know, a 5-episode mini-series where the point is, you know, to be a warning sign. That is the place. A fun, off the beaten track Avengers, you know, alternate world Avengers story, I don't feel like is. If it was a completely different, you know, if it was an indie comic, I feel like that would be fine. I feel like that would be great. I think the main problem is it's just not written well. There is no story outside of the politics. There is no, care about making the characters feel like characters. It just seems like, let's get as many familiar faces in the Marvel Universe into this book as possible, and let's make it as anti-Trump as possible. And, you know, I'm a big fan of anti-Trump. I'm a big fan of anti-Trump stuff. But I feel like at the jeopardy and at the sacrifice of a story, then maybe focus on having a narrative that exists first of all, and then you can put all of the political messaging, and you can have all of the world outside your window stuff afterwards. Infernal Hulk, I'm starting to realise that maybe Philip Kennedy Johnson doesn't really have a there is a bigger picture here, but I feel like the lead up to that bigger picture, maybe Philip Kennedy Johnson just doesn't know how to get to where he wants to get to. Because we obviously have Big Demon Hulk fighting everyone. Now he's fighting X-Men, and there's stuff to do with Glob in this. Who the fuck cares about Glob? Who the fuck is reading a Hulk book that cares about Glob. Not me. But yeah, for some reason, apparently the mutants are classified as the world's monsters. So the Infernal Hulk wants to recruit them to his monster army. And it's just like, where are you going? It does feel like you're treading water. It feels like we're spinning our heels. We're just waiting to have enough issues so that the penny drops on a landmark issue. It does feel like we're spinning our heels into a landmark issue with this one. Which is really unfortunate. Because I really liked the lead up to the Infernal Hulk stuff, and it feels like now we've gotten there. It almost feels like the Infernal Hulk was the point, but now it feels like the Infernal Hulk was the halfway point, and now we're going to have to wait another 35 issues for the penny to drop, and for us to get a feeling as to why we're doing all of this, essentially. Fantastic Four, issue 13, or issue 12. I liked this issue enough. I feel like the big issue with this is that it's not Humberto Ramos on art duties. It's someone else, and that someone else is someone that I don't think can draw. And I can't draw, so I can't really judge. But I don't enjoy the artwork in this, especially when you look at the dope-ass cover and you look at the artwork in the rest of the series that's been so good up until this point. And now we get to this and it's like someone trying to... You know when you go to see a tribute act? Or a tribute Elvis? An Elvis impersonator? This is the kind of... This is the kind of Elvis impersonator that instead of singing their songs, he's the guy who comes out... It's the kind of Elvis impersonator you get at Vegas when you're getting married in Vegas. And the guy who's marrying you is dressed like Elvis, but high as a kite and smells of piss and weed, essentially. That is what the artwork is like in this. And that may be very mean. But it just feels like a very poor imitation. And it doesn't feel like they tried. It feels like instead of someone trying to draw like Humberto Ramos, it feels like it's someone who woke up after a bender and was told they had to cover for a Humberto Ramos issue, and just didn't take the time to learn or research how they draw like they draw. I'm sorry. It's a good story though about Reed and Johnny being stuck in the Roman Empire. And I do like how the cover does have, everything in Roman numerals. So the number of the issue is Roman numerals. The number of the legacy issue is Roman numerals as well. I do like that. It's just unfortunate that it doesn't look very good on the inside. Punisher issue 5. It's very odd that I only read one issue of Punisher a month. But I'm caught up with the series now. And this is the end of the first arc. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with this issue. It just felt like it flew by. And maybe it was just the consequence of, going into my comic book shop and this being the only issue that I had to pick up. But this just, it felt like it went really quickly. And when I say really quickly, I mean much quicker than I expect 25 pages of a comic book issue to go. This and Immortal Hulk have the same problem. And that one is Philip Kennedy Johnson, this is Benjamin Percy. And every other Benjamin Percy book I've read has felt like you get, your bang for your buck. And it just feels like now, and I know when we get into a run, especially with certain books and certain writers, when you get into the weeds of a run, especially when an issue is predominantly action, they do tend to go a lot quicker. But it also feels like, you're not getting your bang for your buck necessarily. But that being said, I'm not disliking this series. I do still really like where it's going, and the kind of reveal at the end of what the next arc is going to be, and we're going to be dealing with a new villain, and all that. I do like that. I do like where we're going, and kind of the idea of, the Punisher having to go up against a victim of one of his kind of, one of his kind of fights, essentially. We're going to have like an even darker reflection of the Punisher in the next arc. And I feel like that's a really interesting way to go with the character and setting up a villain for the Punisher. And, because I always feel like the Punisher is very difficult to have villains for, because they always end up, they always just die. That's the problem with having a superhero or a, character that leads his own comic series that does kill or doesn't have a no killing rule, is that you can't really have recurring villains unless you just keep resurrecting them. You can't really have recurring villains because the hero will just kill them at the end of an arc. We don't have the Mortal Thor, and this is still like essentially being a world tour of Thor villains, and kind of explaining why Thor's Rogues Gallery is a bit shit. Or Thor's Earth-based Rogues Gallery is a bit shit, because essentially this is every Thor villain being defeated by a normal guy that goes gym. A normal guy that goes to the gym, that just has a hammer. And in this issue, we have the Minotaur, who, if there's going to be any character that's going to be defeated by a normal guy, it is poetic that it is the tech CEO and the Marvel Universe's answer to Elon Musk. I really like this series. I like where it's going. I like the setup, and I like that it is kind of important to the wider Marvel Universe as a whole, and the whole idea of, the Marvel Universe has forgotten about Norse mythology and forgotten that Norse mythology is real. I like that is being carried over to other books as well. It's just I'm waiting for the big stuff to happen, and we're 3 issues away from issue 800, and I feel like that's going to be the big one. That's going to be the one that we're all looking for, and the one that we're all going to be like excited about, and we're going to like stand up and applaud at. We then have Doctor Strange number 7, and when I started this series, I was a little bit iffy on it. I was a little bit like, I don't know if this is going to be necessarily for me. And we've we've got here now, and I can confirm this is for me. This series is, especially the second arc, it's really doing some interesting things. I'm going to try and get through the next few books a little bit more quicker, because we are approaching an hour. But the cover is not a lie, but the cover is a lie in as much as it's not. The Enchantress, Aurora the Enchantress, is not a villainous character in this arc, as much as there is kind of undertones that she is going to be taking on a more villainous role in the core Thor book. She's not in this, so you don't need to worry about that. What we are kind of dealing with is someone is killing magical beings again in the Marvel Universe, and Doctor Strange is going across the Nine Realms trying to stop them, essentially, and trying to figure out what he can do and how he can defeat this seemingly nigh indestructible threat. And has it got something to do with the villain of the first arc? Absolutely. So, yeah, it's really exciting, actually. I may be talking about it like it's a bit blasé, but it is just typical Marvel comic fare. And it does seem to be, taking all of the things that have worked for Doctor Strange in recent years and just, doing them again. But, we're tying in this other layer of, people don't know where Doctor Strange is. He's kind of told people that he's been in Asgard, but no one really believes him. We're tying in that angle. We're tying in the fact that he is venturing the Nine Realms. We're tying in that Angela keeps showing up. And it does feel like a secret Angela book a lot of the time. And there's a lot of stuff and a lot of the drama to do with Angela that I just I don't care. I don't care about Angela as a character. I don't care about what's going on. But that's neither here nor there, really. I know this issue cover doesn't really tell you anything about anything of what this book is, but this is Daredevil issue 3. And this is a variant cover that is a magic card that I actually pulled within one of my first 2 Spider-Man packs, which I'm pretty much now set on I'm not really bothered about the Spider-Man magic cards because they've been worked into the Marvel set. And I'm now thinking, why do a Spider-Man set if you're going to do a Marvel set? And the Spider-Man cards are going to be in the Marvel set. Is it because you got the green light from Sony before you got the green light from Marvel, and Sony said yes before Marvel did? Is that what happened? It could be okay if that's what happened. I just feel like doing both is a bit redundant, and especially if now you go ahead and do an X-Men set while also having X-Men cards in the Marvel set. I just feel like just keep adding stuff to the Marvel set now. Especially since those are probably going to be the most sought out Marvel trading cards, is the Magic ones, because just Magic the Gathering doing Marvel. What's not to love? They should also probably do DC as well now. Just because I want that to happen. Just because I think that would be cool, and no other. I don't think there is a proper DC TCG out there. I might be wrong on that. I don't know. Anyways, Daredevil issue 3. This continues to be a good, very straightforward series. Essentially, this picks up directly where the last issue left off, which is Matt Murdock almost being hit by a truck. And getting saved by Spider-Man. And essentially this issue is just Spider-Man teaching Matt Murdock or teaching Daredevil how to fight when he can't rely on his radar sense, because Spider-Man has been in situations where he has not been able to rely on his spider sense, i.e. when he's been fighting against Venom and stuff, and he's trying to relay that information onto Daredevil, which is fun, which is cool. We should get more stuff like that, and I'm going to talk about it more with the Iron Man issue as well. It does feel like a lot of other writers that are, that are not on the main Spider-Man book are writing Spider-Man better than the main Spider-Man book. It's almost like when Spider-Man appears in other stuff, he's allowed to be fun, he's allowed to be a cool character, he's allowed to be a fun character. But in his own book, it gets buried with a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of the weird business stuff of being the most popular character of that comic line. So you can't really break the mold with Spider-Man. So there's a lot of, every comic book is circular at some point. Spider-Man feels like the circle is the smallest. It feels like the circle is about a year, and then you're doing the same stories again, or you're having the same kind of you're having the same dramas as you've had a year ago, and that it's like as soon as a situation gets cleared up, or like as soon as oh no, Peter's having drama with Aunt May again, and he can't live at Aunt May's house. And then as soon as he moves back in and the drama's settled, oh no, he's having another argument with Aunt May. There's big stuff about this is the issue where Aunt May and Peter have the conversation. And it's didn't they have the conversation in 2002? Why do they need to have the conversation again? And why does Aunt May look younger now than she did in 2002? That's not how aging works, people. Marvel, it's not how aging works. Why are your characters getting younger? Why does Cyclops look 22 now? Anyway, speaking of Spider-Man being better in other people's books than his own, Iron Man issue 6 came out, and not only is Spider-Man better in this book, Norman Osborn's better in this book than he has been in years. Because someone is actually treating him like he used to be a villain. I don't like how easily Norman got redeemed. And he does get... it does feel like Tony starts to trust him a little bit too easily by the end of this issue. But I get it for the pacing of this issue, and I understand that Norman and Tony's relationship is not going to be important to this run. So we don't need, a whole arc of Tony and Norman learning to like each other. We don't need to do a triumph and torment, but it's Iron Man and Norman. We don't need to do that. But this is just a fun issue where the Iron Patriot armor gets stolen. Tony thinks that Norman stole it. Spider-Man shows up because he just wanted a bagel, and the best bagels in New York apparently come from the Oscorp cafeteria. And basically hijinks ensue. Ghost is involved for some reason, and we get more stuff to do with this conspiracy with the new Citizen V. And I am loving this run. It feels like it's the best thing coming out of Marvel at the moment. Or if not the best thing coming out of Marvel, one of the best things coming out of Marvel. And it just feels like really good Marvel stuff. It just feels like this is what Marvel should be. And a lot of other Marvel books are more interested in let's get to the next big event, or let's grind our heels until the next big story beat. And Iron Man is just like, let's make every issue fun. And that's something that Joshua Williamson is really good at. Transitions, people. We're going to talk about Superman issue 38. 2 issues away from issue 40. Mad. And this is... It's primetime, baby. This is Superman, or Superboy Prime, on his big redemption tour, touring around the DC universe, essentially just Metropolis. I'm going to move my hand, but we have the introduction of this new character, Witchfire, who is not new. Apparently, she has a big, deep history in the DC universe, but I have only just recently started reading DC. So I don't know who this is, but essentially she's being brought in to be kind of a romantic interest for Superboy Prime, or more like Superboy Prime is a romantic interest for Witchfire. And this issue also is directly leading into what next issue is going to be, which is big fight against Manchester Black. Manchester Black is a character that I love because he was in Superman vs. the Elite, which is a animated movie that I watched probably when I was way too young to watch it. But I have very, very vivid memories of watching Superman vs. the Elite, loving it, and Manchester Black just being one of the few DC characters from the UK, one of the few DC villains from the UK, and just being kind of like a massive tribute to the punk rock era, and especially punk rock Manchester, which is a really, really fun period in the UK. And yeah, my pick of the month, or my favourite book of the month, Firestorm, issue 3. Martin Stein is a dickhead. Martin Stein is the true villain of this arc. Essentially, this is the secret history of Firestorm, the secret history of Martin Stein, essentially. And to avoid spoilers, to avoid getting too in the weeds, because we are 1 hour 10 minutes into this video already, Martin Stein does a lot of things, really shady things, to orchestrate the creation of the Firestorm Matrix, the creation of Firestorm, and to ensure that it is him and Ronnie Raymond. And this single issue, I have not known a single issue to make me feel such deep hatred for a character than this issue. Martin Stein is honestly one of the worst people in the DC universe. You know, basically trapping this poor kid, making him feel like he's so much better than, or like making him feel like he's the most important person on the planet, essentially. But it's all just an attempt to groom him into becoming, a nuclear man, essentially, forcing yourself inside his head, quite literally. And basically, when Ronnie finds out that it was Martin Stein's fault that he's Firestorm in the first place, the Firestorm Matrix takes over. Martin Stein's kicked out. Ronnie isn't strong enough to fight off the Firestorm Matrix in and of itself. And to add insult to injury, Firestorm was created to essentially be the thing that tells off superheroes when they step too far, and now Firestorm is the thing that needs to be told off for stepping too far, and he's just essentially nigh on a god. So it's gonna be interesting to see where things go from here. And we also get some stuff from the other Firestorm, the one that was in Injustice. I can't remember his name for the life of me. But essentially, he's just like, yeah, I'm not going to be a part of this run because I'm married now, and my fiance is pregnant, so I can't be a part of this. I can't die and leave a kid without a dad. So I'm not going to be a part of this book, which probably means I'm eventually going to be a part of this book. Something's going to happen that makes me a part of this book, and that's something that's going to happen. Probably be his fiance dying. If I were a betting man, if I were, because I've read enough comics, I've seen enough films, I've experienced enough media to know, right, he's obviously here. This is obviously setting up that he's got a life. He's got everything figured out. Something's going, the shoe's going to drop. Something's going to bring him back in, and that's probably going to be, his love interest getting fridged, for lack of a better term. Anyways, that is everything that I read, everything that I watched, everything that I experienced this month. Light month, honestly. I apologise that the first 20 minutes of this was me going on a massive tangent and rant about the political climate of the planet as a whole. I just, Tiptoe fucked me up this month, man. It honestly did. It really opened my eyes to a lot of things happening in my own life, and the certain behaviours of certain people in my own life that I should probably address. But anyways, without getting too in the weeds about it, it's a show that is very important, especially for the time that we live in now, especially to come out in Pride Month as well. It's a massive reminder of why stuff like Pride exists and why we need it and why it is important and why it shouldn't be banned, and why these things that from the outside looking in may seem like they shouldn't need to exist anymore, because we've got our rights. Women can vote now. Women can do the same jobs as men. Homosexual people can get married. But on the other hand, drag artist is invited into a school to read a story to kids, and is called a paedophile. And that school is threatened with closure because they dare allow a drag queen to read a story. How messed up is that? Meanwhile, people who are in the Epstein files are still allowed to roam free. Just something to think about. Just something to think about. You know. I did, you know, I'm not going to get into the weeds of it all, but I feel like there is a lot of, and, you know, obviously, blatantly, one of the big talking points of that show is that there's a lot of, you know, emotional manipulation in the media, especially on the right. And a lot of it is fear-mongering, a lot of it is lies, and a lot of it is pointing towards people that can't defend themselves, and it's punching down. And the people that are unfortunately getting blamed for a lot of the problems in this country and a lot of the problems in America as well are, you know, immigrants, minorities, people that can't defend themselves, and at the end of the day, they are scapegoats for people at the top, the 1%, millionaires, billionaires, Elon Musk, a trillionaire, people that have the money to solve global problems that just don't. And why don't they? Well, that's a question to ask them. Anyways, that is everything that I watched, everything that I looked at, everything that I ingested this month. I will see you guys in the next one. Hopefully you enjoyed. I'm going to refrain from any political talk for the foreseeable future, because it doesn't make me feel good talking about it. It doesn't, you know, but I can't say I watched these shows and not give my 2 cents on their speaking points. You know, it's like if I watched a documentary about the war in Ukraine and didn't say that I think certain people that are in charge of Russia are horrible. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Hit that dislike button if you don't agree with the points that I brought up in this video. Because I'm sure there will be people that won't. All I have to say to you is just think about the things that you're ingesting and ask why. You know. You know, being able to ask questions about things is, you know, and to think a little bit deeper than just the surface level of things is really important. If you don't want to, if you're happy, you know, if you're happy with, you know, things that happen and you think the world is in an amazing place, more power to you. If you can sleep at night with, you know, the information, if you just don't care about watching the news at all, you know, more power to you. You're probably, you know, you're better than I am. Anyways, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Peace.